I'm going to show you a way to strip off the insulation from small gauge wires. Wires that would typically be too small of a gauge to be stripped properly from a wire stripper. Or maybe you have a wire stripper like this one right here, which only goes up to 24 gauge, which wouldn't actually strip this the insulation off of a wire like this. So what you would use to strip wires this small traditionally would be either to use your teeth and just gently bite down on the end of this wire here, and then pull it out with your teeth. Hopefully you'll strip the insulation off. That's more of a hack than anything, and to be honest, it'll probably damage the wire inside because this is so small. So really what you want to be using here to do this is what's known as a hot knife, right? Now, hot knives, they can vary in price and everything, and you don't really need to buy one to get it done. You can actually make your own hot knife, which is what I'm demonstrating here. Now, to make your own hot knife, this one that I made myself is made out of coat hanger wire. So I just took coat hanger wire and I cut it to size, okay? And then after I cut it to size, I went ahead and I bent the ends of it right here so that my hot knife wire, the cutting wire, will have something to hold on to, so that I can stretch it across these two ends here. So you need that, and then you also need Kapton tape. That's spelled with a K, K-A-P-T-O-N. It's this yellowish tape right here. This is a roll of Kapton tape. I just got this off of Amazon. And Kapton tape is thermal tape. It doesn't melt. It's extremely good at resisting extreme temperatures. I think this will protect or insulate up to 600 something degrees, maybe more. But it's also an excellent electrical insulator. So that's why I'm using it on here, because in order to make this work, I'm using electricity right through a battery to basically short and heat this little wire right here. And I'll show you where I get this wire from. It's actually from this cable right here. This is just like a standard 18 gauge cable right here, wire, and I already stripped it to show you. So this is what you would do here. You have to strip the insulation off of a wire like this. Okay, again, this is just like a 16 or 18 gauge wire. So you strip the insulation off completely, making sure that it's longer than the width of the the coat hanger wire. And you're going to want to just isolate the strands and pull out just one little strand of the wire. It doesn't matter if it's copper or if it's aluminum or steel. This one here I think is looks like aluminum coated copper. But you just take one of these little strands, okay, and then these are pliable enough that you can actually make a little slip knot on the end right here. You just basically make a knot and you tie it to the end here, and you have to put Kapton tape on first so that it doesn't short onto the coat hanger wire. So you wrap the ends in Kapton tape first, and then you basically tie the wire strand onto the end here, and you can wrap it a few times if you want. If you have too much of the wire, that's fine. You just don't want to. You want to make it so that the cutting wire right here is actually as short as possible. because the longer that this wire is, the less heat that it's going to generate. You want to make it really short so that when this circuit right here that I made, when it shorts out, it gets the most amount of heat that it possibly can from the battery. So you tie it to one side and then you tie it to the other, okay, making sure that the wire is pulled tight across here. It shouldn't snap under some decent, you know, when you have it stretched out like this, it shouldn't really snap all that much. If you pull it too hard, it will snap though. So now that you have the wire running between the two ends here, and again there's Kapton tape over the coat hanger right here, you next need to hook up the wiring that goes to the battery that you're going to be using. You can't really use like a power supply or like a AC to DC converter, because what ends up happening is when you connect the two positive and negative wires on a power supply like that, it's going to turn off, and it'll also damage the power supply. So you want to use a battery, because a battery will just keep shorting itself. The battery will get really hot when you do this, so just keep that in mind. You don't want to run this thing for more than a few seconds at a time. So if you notice here, I just went ahead and hooked up one wire to the positive terminal right here of the battery. Okay, and I used some Kapton tape to secure it, again because this can get really hot and I don't want any of the material that I'm using to secure the wire to burn off or melt off. So I have one end going to the positive connection of the battery here, and then I just took that around here and I used little grocery ties or whatever to attach it to one post of the hot knife, the wire stripper that we're going to be using here. Okay, and then on the end of that wire I stripped off probably, I don't know, that much or so, like probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches of the insulation, and I took that and I wrapped it around the end there and I secured it nice and tight so that it's making contact with the cutting wire. Okay, and let's see here, you don't want to use the cutting wire, like you don't want to extend it past here and then run the wire to the battery connecting to it. Like if the cutting wire comes out all the way out to here and you attach the wire out here and run it to the battery, it's just not going to get hot enough, because again you want to keep this as short as possible. So make sure that the wires that you use that are connected to the battery only connect to the wire, the cutting wire, at the ends here of the cutter. So that's the positive side. I don't have the negative side connected to the battery, but I do have it fixed to the frame here of the cutter, right? I don't have it connected obviously to the battery right now, because if I did, it would short circuit all the time and this battery would get incredibly hot and probably burst. And again, we only want to use the hot knife that we made here in for a few seconds each time we use it. So again, that's attached here. The negative wire goes up to the other end of the hot knife right here. And again, I wrapped it around just the same as the other side. And what ends up happening is when you hook up the battery to the wire right there, you just take the small gauge wiring right here and you put it underneath the cutting wire, and you just slowly rotate it while the wire is burning hot. And you'll get some smoke probably coming off of it or whatever, that's fine. But it's only going to take you, like rotating a wire like this, I can get it stripped off in about, I don't know, 2 seconds or so. And then once that's done, I can just pull off the end right there with my fingernails or whatever. So you don't have to use a wire stripper at all. And these are the type of results you can get from using a homemade hot knife wire cutter here. And if you notice, the wires are completely undamaged. You know, only the ends of the small gauge wiring right here are you know, are stripped, and you know, I just twisted the ends right there, and you know, it makes for a nice clean strip in the wire. This is perfect for use in soldering, especially if you have to solder onto small posts or something like this, or small pads like this right here. I'm going to be turning this into a Ethernet cable extender, and you know, this is a perfect use scenario for using this little, you know, hot knife wire stripper. So that's what you use it for. You know, it's pretty basic. I can't really show you it in use right now because I would need 2 hands to do it, but it's really simple to use. You just have to get used to using one hand to hold the wire to the battery, and then using your other hand to rotate the wire on it. So it'll work with thicker wires too. Like, I could use it to strip the other end off of like this larger gauge wire here, but it takes a little bit longer, so keep that in mind. If you use it on larger gauge wires, what ends up happening is that the battery will lose voltage pretty quickly. So this is really best to use on things that aren't going to fit your wire stripper. So, or cables that are really delicate and you want to make sure that, you know, you get every last strand of the conductors in the wire. So that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video and you learned something useful.